Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming. I appreciate your time. The title of my presentation is How to Have a Good Fight. So, how to have a good fight. Let me start with an example of a situation that I had with a colleague of mine at work. We are colleagues. This person is not my boss. However, she instructed me one night, took a phone call, and I let her know that someone called, and she said, well, next time you need to go ahead and take a message and write that down. And make sure you ask this, and this. I was a little caught off guard by her response to me and her reaction to me. I felt like it was a little parental. So, we've all had situations like that with family members, colleagues, and the question is, do the conflict outcomes look like this boxing match, or does it look like this picture of love and peace and conciliation? So today I'm going to talk to you about how to have a good fight. Conflict has been defined as a dynamic process that occurs between interdependent parties as they experience negative emotional reactions to perceived, and perceived is the key word here, perceived disagreements and interference with the attainment of their goals. And in James chapter 1, verse 4, he asks the question, why are there quarrels among you? Do they not come from the desires that battle within you? There's nothing wrong with having desires, but in conflict, each individual, because of their interdependence on each other, they each have goals, and sometimes they're divergent goals instead of convergent goals. So our goal is to have converging goals instead of divergent goals. So as you'll see in your next PowerPoint, what is the goal in a good fight? The goal in any good fight or conflict resolution situation is conciliation. This means to make compatible, to reconcile. The word conciliation is a Latin word which means to assemble, to unite, or to win over. Mind you, it does not mean to win. It means to win over. And winning over someone means that you are likely to be flexible, and your goal is to make sure that you're giving them what they need, at the same time receiving what you need as well. The very first step in achieving the goal of conciliation is civility. Civility is constituted by an attitude of respect toward others manifested in our behavior towards them. It's not manifested from an emotion that we feel, because our emotions do not have to dictate our behavior. So our behavior can be respectful while we might on the inside be feeling less than respectful, but we still can maintain that self-control and be civil. Again, respect is not predicated on how we feel about them in particular. And be mindful of the impact that our behaviors have on others. That's a very important thing when trying to resolve conflict, or when you're trying to have a good fight. Our behaviors will impact how they respond and how they perceive us. The second step in having a good fight is being problem-oriented. Be sure to separate the problem from the person. The person's not the problem. The problem is the problem. And when you're describing what the problem is, be descriptive about the source of the problem in a non-accusatory manner. So like the example that I had with my colleague, if I would have responded in this way, well, you're awfully bossy for someone who's not an authority over me. That is a good way to start a fight that's not going to be resolved anytime soon. The way I handled it is I decided to sit down and write myself a note about the problem. The problem was this. This is how I felt about that problem. How can we resolve this? And it worked out very well for me, actually, because I was able to work through that conflict with her without being accusatory, and then just putting it out there how I felt about that and how I perceived that exchange, and it worked out really well. Another bad example of not separating the problem from the person is, I would like to speak with you about how you talk to me. You are rude and selfish. That is not descriptive. That's accusatory and very one-sided. A good example of this would be, I would like to speak with you about the comment you made recently. Do it yourself. Don't put that emphasis on it. I emphasize that so that you know that it's, quote, do it yourself. I felt disrespected when you spoke to me in that way. That is much more problem-oriented and non-accusatory. All of it is on me. I felt when you said, this is how I perceived that, versus you're rude and you're selfish and I don't like you. The third step in having a good fight is equality. When you're in conflict with someone, maintaining power balance is a must. One person cannot have the thumb on another person or wield some form of authority if the end goal is going to be conciliation. Now, mind you, an exception to this would be a boss and a subordinate. But in interpersonal communication, such as in family situations, colleague to colleague, maintaining balance in power positions is really important. Lack of power balance frustrates conflict resolution efforts because there is a desire to control versus a desire to reconciliate or to have a common goal. Each party should have a say in conflict resolution goals as well. The next step is being solution-oriented. Solutions must be doable and durable. Durability is often contingent upon meeting the interests of those involved in the conflict. When the solutions don't meet the interests of both or all of the parties in the conflict, they're not likely to stick with it. Also, making use of I statements throughout the entire process is vital. Use of I statements allows the person you're speaking with or resolving conflict with to be non-defensive and to be able to hear us. When we make you statements, you made me feel blank. Defenses go up instantly, and they no longer can hear you. And so the goal of having a good fight is to be able to hear each other, to listen to each other. And another thing, I think I jumped over empathy. Being empathetic when you're in a conflict is extremely important. According to Betancourt, empathy can be compared to a chess player's type of empathy. So it's this idea of, if you make this move and I make this move, what are the outcomes going to be of that? Or if I were in your position, what would I do? So it's that idea of putting yourself in that person's shoes. It doesn't mean that putting yourself in that person's shoes means, yes, what you are talking to me about, what you're perceiving about the situation is true. It just means if I were in your situation, could I understand how you feel about that if that's how I thought about that circumstance? So, empathy is extremely important. Empathy is not an emotional response like, oh, I feel sorry for you, or, oh, yes, that hurts my feelings. But it's this idea of, if I could put myself in your place, what would that look like for me? So it's an idea of just coming to understanding how that other person perceives things. Next, equality. Again, maintaining power balance. Equality in communication and conflict is extremely important. And then lastly, I'd like to revisit the idea of using I statements. using I statements is vital to the success of any good fight. Always avoid you, blame shifting, and be respectful in communication and be willing to hear others out. Thank you for listening, and I hope that from this point on you guys will be able to have a good fight next time you have a fight. And holidays are coming up, so I'm sure you'll have plenty of opportunities to have a good fight with someone that you love. Thank you.